The once prosperous land of Rajarata has fallen into chaos. Petty family feuds have torn the empire apart as the death of a beloved monarch is mourned through the land. Out of this confusion emerges a boy king who would one day unite disparate realms, undertake unprecedented public works, defeat his enemies with guile and cruelty, and even for a short time colonize Burma. This is the story of Parakramabahu I, the king with the golden arms. The year is 1110 AD in the tropical island of Lanka, and her people mourn the death of their beloved king Vijayabahu. Under his half-century of rule, Lanka's borders have been secured from repeated invasions from the Chola of South India. But with his passing, a vacuum of power begins to develop in the northern Sinhalese kingdom of Rajarata, the jewel in the crown of Lanka. The country is plunged into insecurity and family infighting. The late king's son and rightful heir Vikramabahu establishes his dominance over Polonnaruwa, the seat of Rajarata, despite a challenge from his aunt Mitta and her 3 sons. Mitta, with her brother and 3 sons in tow, carve up the rest of the country. The western land of Mayarata is taken by Mitta's oldest son Manabarana, while Kittisirimaga and Sirivallabha share power over the southern lands of Ruhuna. Mitta settles in Ruhuna with her extended family, and it is here that she will live until her death. War breaks out between Vikramabahu and his 3 cousins, but a ceasefire is called in just as quickly. Peace is fragile, and union is all important. But for now, the 3 brothers preside somewhat peacefully over their lands. One night, the oldest, King Manabarana, has a dream that a spirit elephant would enter his union with Queen Ratnavali and an heir to the throne would be conceived. The queen has the exact same dream. In Sinhalese mythology, this usually meant that great things were afoot. It is into this fragile peace that Parakramabahu is born. Even as a child, he is destined for the monarchy. Or he had really big arms? Either way, his name meant arms that conquer enemies, or literally enemy-crushing arms. His future greatness is so well understood that when word of the prince's birth is sent through the land, even King Vikramabahu of Rajarata extends an olive branch, asking that one day Parakramabahu be heir to his throne. But tragedy strikes as King Manabarana dies when Parakramabahu is still a child, and his brother Kittisirimaga takes over the land of Mayarata. Soon after, the widowed Queen Ratnavali and her children leave Mayarata to live with their uncle Sirivallabha in the south. They are second-class citizens in the established court of Sirivallabha, and little respect is shown to the queen or her children. In an affront to Ratnavali, her daughter is heartbreakingly married off to King Sirivallabha, son of the Kalinga clan. With humiliations mounting and no path to greatness in sight, Parakramabahu decides to retreat to the place of his birth, where his sympathetic and more importantly childless uncle, Kittisirimaga, presides over Mayarata. Kittisirimaga is a pious and academic man and understands that he now has a project. He is a kingmaker. He sets about training Parakramabahu in the ways of the empire. Parakramabahu dives into his uncle's excellent library, reading texts such as Kautilya's Arthashastra and Niti, treatises on statecraft, economic policy and military strategy. Legend has it that by the tender age of 12, the prince's marksmanship was unmatched and that he was an excellent sword fighter. Kittisirimaga even took much interest in involving the young prince in the affairs of the state. Over and over again, as the young prodigy pores over maps and listens at his uncle's courts to long debates over schemes of consolidating power, his desires burn even brighter. His destiny becomes even clearer. He must rule over a united Lanka. He must join up the lands of Rajarata, Mayarata and Ruhuna. Our young prince is growing ever more incensed with ambition and starts planning an eventual conquest of Rajarata. Along with his entourage, he sneaks out of the palace at night to escape north, presumably to gather intel. To support this scheme, they have taken Sanka, a loyal general to his uncle Kittisirimaga, into their confidence. But Sanka knows that the peace with the court of Polonnaruwa is hard won, and encroaching into their lands will break apart the flimsy ceasefire. Fearing for the boy's life, Sanka betrays him to the king. We are pretty sure Parakramabahu is still a teenager at this point and is annoyed that his harebrained scheme is foiled. But Parakramabahu was no ordinary teenager. This was betrayal. This was a loss of face. This was a man who dared to stop a boy born to be king, and thus the prince had Sanka killed. After killing a general of the court, it was only common sense for a prince to run away. But Parakramabahu stayed just where he was. Citizens of the kingdom and Sanka's loyalists rise up to challenge the young prince's teenage audacity in killing a beloved general. They brand him a traitor. A military coup is imminent. The prince gathered the other generals, trying to explain that it was not the throne of Maharata he was after, but that he was only trying to expand the kingdom for his uncle. The generals agreed to let him escape to a small town nearby, and when he got there, they attacked him anyway. Prince Parakramabahu, with his trusted entourage, manages to fight off the generals and peasants that threaten him and stays concealed in the town. By now, Rajarata is ruled by Vikramabahu's son Gajabahu II. The prince sends a letter to Nagaragiri, a general of Gajabahu, to let him know that he has killed the general Sanka, has escaped from Maharata, and is now inviting him over to dinner. When Nagaragiri accepts the invitation, legend has it that the prince even gifted him with his own jewels and a prized elephant, lavishing the general's men with a great feast. King Kittisiremega, after hearing of these overtures, was uncomfortable with such a display of hospitality to rivals of the north. Fearing his nephew would befriend the enemy and threaten him, he sends 10 battalions from the lands of Maharata. They have one mission: capture the willful prince Parakramabahu. By now, he is beyond being taken captive just to retreat to his uncle's kingdom quietly. He decides to fight back. The battle ends in a rampage, killing peasantry and setting an entire village on fire. Parakramabahu is now in deep. He has established himself as a clever warlord against his uncle's army and proven his mettle to the general Nagaragiri. He begins to put his plan in motion. Confident of his safe passage, Parakramabahu runs off to the north. As soon as he enters Rajarata, King Gajabahu is informed of his arrival thanks to the spies that crawl through his land. The prince's gamble pays off. Instead of ordering his death, Gajabahu decides to invite the prince over to his palace to show him some of that famous Sri Lankan hospitality, and drops his guard completely. After all, here is a young prince that has seemingly betrayed his own uncle and risked his rise to the throne of Dakkinadesh. Parakramabahu would hide from his uncle Kittisiremega in Rajarata for years, but his ambition would burn even brighter. Hiding within the enemy's own walls, the young prince gathers intelligence. He learns about Gajabahu's military, sizes up the Rajarata treasury, and bides his time. He uses patience and guile. Sending his men dressed as monks into the heart of the city, some as hunters into the thick of the forest, he learns about the enemy. He himself ventured out in civilian clothing, greeting the citizens of Rajarata and showering them with gifts. By the end, Parakramabahu knew which of Gajabahu's generals were loyal, which ones had short tempers, and which ones were selfish enough to betray him. But all that scheming wasn't enough for the prince. He needed his fame to spread among the peasantry as a generous and far-thinking future monarch. He spent his own personal wealth to renovate several lakes, developing the system of agriculture in Rajarata to win over the farmers. He appeased the clergy by engaging in Buddhist rituals and even offered his sister Bhadravati to the king in marriage. The prince's fame is growing through Rajarata, and Gajabahu gets a little more apprehensive with each passing gesture, until one day he had enough. Catch us next week on this channel as Parakramabahu prepares to face Gajabahu and comes a step closer to his destiny.